Well, President Trump setting his sights on rebuilding America's bridges and roads as he calls on Congress to approve a $1 trillion infrastructure plan. Mr. Trump sees it as a way to boost jobs, not to mention much-needed repairs. But the hefty price tag is sparking some concerns on Capitol Hill about who will actually foot the bill. Here's the president laying out his vision.
Crumbling infrastructure will be replaced with new roads, bridges, tunnels, airports, and railways gleaming across our very, very beautiful land. I will be asking Congress to approve legislation that produces a $1 trillion investment in infrastructure of the United States, financed through both public and private capital, creating millions of new jobs. This effort will be guided by two core principles: Buy American and Hire American.
Mark Aesch is the CEO of TransPro Consulting. He's worked on a variety of transportation management and safety issues around the world and is author of the book Saving America, where he addresses this issue in part. Mark, I want to underscore something that President Trump said. He said a $1 trillion investment. That's different than a $1 trillion spending package, but sometimes it's difficult to understand how. What do you see the difference in premise as?
Yeah, so I think there's two pieces, and I think the first is the president has really come out and has been very, very clear about what success looks like in this regard, and that is he's going to put Americans' safety first. The reality and the frankness, Jenna, you and I have talked about this, that so many people, 600,000 bridges in America, are known to be structurally deficient, yet we send our school children across them every single day. And so I think what the president is saying, first of all, we're going to fix this for a matter of American safety. The second is, while it's clearly the right thing to do, it's actually going to create jobs. There's no question that investment and truly investment will create jobs.
Most Americans have the point of reference of the stimulus package, for example, during the Obama administration coming out of the financial crisis. And I actually went back and looked at a few of those line items, and it was separated with infrastructure with, for example, $8 billion here, $8 billion there, ones to repair the roads. They had all different sort of descriptions for infrastructure. This seems different, but how is it, Mark?
Yeah, so I can tell you how it's different, Jenna. I was actually running a public agency that was getting some of those dollars from the stimulus, and the biggest fallacy of that entire conversation is 30% of the money went to fund bureaucracy. It literally went to fund government itself. I think what we're going to see dramatically different here from this president is he's going to take that 30% that went to fund bureaucracy the last time and actually put it into concrete that's going to make our infrastructure safer for Americans.
How do we know that? What is the role of the private sector that's been talked about over the years?
So one of the things you're beginning to see is the private sector stepping in and beginning to invest through public-private partnerships and a number of other vehicles. For example, in Indiana recently, they just opened the first ever 100% privately financed toll road. I mean, it's completely modern, completely managed by the private sector. You're able, through technology, to be told for it. People are able to choose it for the marketplace. That's where the president's going, and you see it in the legislation he's posing.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because Elaine Chao, the new Secretary of Transportation, was on with Sean Hannity after the president's address to Congress. And they were talking about what would it look like to have the private sector really involved and perhaps leading this effort when it comes to repairing our roads and bridges. And here's a little bit of that exchange.
If I'm hearing you properly, maybe what you're saying is that, for example, if a company were to rebuild a road, they might get their investment back by, say, having a toll on that road, and this way the taxpayers don't pay a penny, they make a profit, it's a win-win, something like that?
Yes, thank you for putting it that way. You know, that is certainly one example of how that would work. Now, I have to say there are some people who may not support toll roads, but we have to take a look at all of these financing mechanisms, because once again, the needs of our infrastructure are so great that the federal government cannot and should not be the only source of funding to repair our bridges, our roads, our energy grid.
Mark, for many of our viewers, they may be thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm paying taxes to make sure that my roads are maintenance, all right? I'm actually paying for that. So wait, if a private company steps in, then I'm going to be paying for tolls on top of it? How does it work for your average consumer? Is it somehow that we would be paying double?
No, so I think the reality is, so we do pay taxes today. One of the things that you see in the federal government is they've actually set a record each of the last 2 years for the revenue that's rolling in, but it's not being put into the right places. And so I think the key here is we are going to pay taxes. Obviously, that's going to continue. Hopefully, they're going to be less taxes under the president and the Congress. But the reality is user fees in regards to infrastructure, particularly over a 30-year period of time, which is what these projects are for, are just so critical. And I think, Jenna, the point of this and the reason that user fees do make sense, we've seen a lot in the news about Russia, the last several months. The reality is we are all playing Russian roulette when it comes to using an infrastructure that is deteriorating.
Right. I mean, and certainly, listen, we don't want to drive over bridges that are going to collapse. Or, we've seen some of those tragic stories over the years, and it is horrifying. But it is a question about money management. We seem to have been, batting around this story for so many years, and it's a question about why hasn't anything really improved? What's your assessment for why hasn't this gotten done already, and why this is really going to be different?
Yeah, so it's a good question as to how it's going to be different. I think we're starting to get to the point that the fact that people are recognizing that for 40 years, Democrats and Republicans alike have not taken the issue seriously. And this president has stepped up. It's not exactly, if you poll it, it's not going to hit to the top of the sexy things like green energy and, health care and those sorts of things. But the reality is when people are trying to get to the conferences to talk about those topics, they're driving over bridges that we know are not safe. And the president has said, no more. I'm not going to continue to send billions of dollars to build dams in Egypt when we don't have safe roads and bridges in this country. This president is making it a priority, and he's going to put the dollars behind it to make it happen. Republicans and Democrats have not put the money into these projects, and they need to.
We'll see if the focus changes. Now when you're driving underneath those, you don't have to go through a toll anymore, Mark, right? It just sort of takes a picture of your pass. I mean, it's sort of like online shopping, Amazon Prime. You don't even know. You just click the button, and you go through. And so it adds up over the years. That's why I'm asking this question.
It's customer-friendly at its best,
yes,
right?
That's right. You don't even know you're paying. It's just amazing. Mark, we appreciate your expertise. We look forward to having you back. Thank you.
Great to see you.